Welcome to the Upward Running Podcast, where faith fuels your fitness journey.
Welcome back to the Upward Running Podcast. This is your one stop each week to be motivated and inspired to get off the couch and onto the running trail where you can, in turn, inspire others to do the same. Let's learn, laugh, and leap into running together, giving God the glory for what we are able to do in His name. Amen. Now, I'm your running host, Dean Thompson, coming to you once again from the Upward Sports Studio. Are you part of a running group? You know, they can be so important to our success, to becoming fitter and faster. And we're going to talk about that subject today. Then I'm going to share an observation I had while out cheering for the Upward Running folks in St. Petersburg, Florida this past weekend. And joining me once again for those stories and much more is Upward Running Director Mitchell Hollis.
Thanks for having me, Dean. So we've both been on the road.
Yeah, you had an adventure as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. It was a lot of fun. I spent 3 days on the road in Louisiana and Mississippi with Wade Taylor, who's one of our incredible account reps. And, man, he wore me out, Dean.
I bet he did.
I'm not a traveling person much anyway. I don't travel a ton, and Wade's a veteran at it. So we visited 12 churches in 3 days, covering, I think, around 700 miles. And it's one of those, I mean, at the end of the day, we were going from 7:30 to 6 o'clock every day. And you're just zapped at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I've never been to Louisiana. That place has some seafood.
Oh yeah.
I was having to get my exercise in the morning and in the evenings just so I wouldn't gain 30 pounds over 3 days because it was incredible food.
Oh wow.
But it was a lot of fun. Good company. Wade is just an incredible guy. I mean, just so much energy. And he's a runner himself, and so it was a lot of fun. I look forward to. I want to put you with Wade for 3 days. I think it'll wear you out too.
That'd be good for me. I like that. I like the idea. I like going out and meeting folks from the other churches.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
That was a lot of fun. It's just to go into the communities because that's something we've never really had the luxury of doing over 14, 15 years because it was just 4 of us, and so we had to kind of hold the fort down here. And so to get out on the road and to meet some of these churches and to see how these programs are actually being done on the ground. It was really cool. And I got to talk, a lot of the Upward churches, they're new to the Upward Running, and so they were really excited. I think 10 of the 12 churches are going to take it right off the bat.
Wow.
And so, yeah, they really latched on to something for adults.
Yeah, that's really cool. I can't wait to see how that works out. I'm sure it's going to be great. Meanwhile, I was down in Florida, St. Petersburg. We had a group of, I don't know, between 40 and 50 people who were running anywhere from 5K to a marathon. Mostly, we had a lot of half marathoners this time around. And so that was a lot of fun to be out there and just encourage them and cheer for them running around the streets of St. Petersburg, Florida. Sure. It was a great place, great location.
What was the weather like down there?
The weather, well, it was perfect to start with. It got warm. It got into the 70s.
Yeah,
for the second half of the race.
Which just out for spectators, that's perfect.
Yes.
Runners, it's a little hot.
Yeah, it was perfect for spectating.
Yeah.
But for runners, it took a toll on some of those folks. As a matter of fact, I went out and ran myself. We were there for a few days, so I ran, I think, 3 times while I was down there.
Yeah.
And the heat was getting to me.
Really?
I mean, I haven't been running in the heat. And so the first
we got
few days,
a little tease of it a couple weeks ago, and then winter just smacked us in the face again.
Yeah, yeah.
That's typical for this time of year.
Yeah, that's one of the things I didn't realize. The new watches have a heat acclimatization measurement on it.
Really?
It says I'm 15% acclimatized now to running in the heat after being in St. Pete for 3 days.
Never seen that.
I had never seen it either. I just noticed it just yesterday. So That's pretty cool. So, but of course I'm going to go backwards now because I'm not running in the heat anymore. So yeah, but it's all good.
So
it's coming.
Quick story, and I don't know that this was the case. I'm pretty sure it was. Went out one evening and I was just doing a walk and I was FaceTiming Holly, and it was already starting to rain. And of course, I like getting out in the rain sometimes, but the lightning was starting to move in, and I mean the clouds were just gnarly looking. And I even held the phone up and I said, "It looks like a tornado over there." And I go in 15 minutes later, and they're talking about a tornado that touched down just right down the road from where we were. So,
oh my goodness,
it had to be it. But
yeah,
I even took a picture of the TV and sent it to Holly. I said, I think this was right next to us.
Wow.
This might have been what we saw.
Oh, my goodness. That's a little scary.
I don't know.
Well, listen, we have a lady in Tennessee. She lives 30 minutes outside of Chattanooga who is visually impaired. She's not completely blind, but she's visually impaired, so she has a difficult time. She's looking for somebody as a guide. So if you're out there and you can either do that, or you know somebody or have a contact for somebody who can be a guide for somebody, she's looking for somebody maybe to help her with that. So just a shout out to those folks that might be able to help. Our post of the week this week comes from Josh Johnson. He said, great weekend in St. Pete, getting to meet, pray, and run with other members. I want to thank Anna Hers for running with me for over half of the marathon. She has such a great outlook and so enthusiastic. We talked about everything, and sharing Jesus is also for fellow believers too. It's good to hear how Jesus has impacted us all and gives motivation and encouragement to continue fighting the fight. Congratulations, Anna, on your finish. And of course, Josh finished the marathon as well. So, I don't know if there's a group of people out there that show up in better and more enthusiastic numbers than Team Coolidge, which is the group that I know Josh doesn't want to hear us tout what a great leader he is. But I'm sorry, Josh. Though. Yeah, he does a wonderful job of being a good leader for that group. And everywhere you go, they wear these orange shirts, and you just can't miss the orange shirts. As a spectator, I really appreciate the orange shirts.
I would love to figure out how to get them in red shirts, though, because that Tennessee orange, I don't know.
I like it. I like it a lot better than red.
The only thing that would be better would be yellow, right?
Yeah, that'd be
yellow.
Even better. Yeah. And Josh, he's he's a humble guy. He's not a very loud guy.
No.
But he leads by example and with his heart. And I think everybody sees his heart, and his heart speaks loud and clear for Jesus.
Sure.
So, pretty cool. And then, of course, he's running with Anna. I don't know if you remember who Anna is.
Yeah.
She is just a ball. She's energy. I don't know that she has the ability to not smile.
Yeah.
She's just smiling all the time, always positive about everything. And she's infectious. It's really cool to be around her. So that was pretty cool. They only finished just a few minutes apart in their two marathons. It's people like them and a lot more people that make these weekends really, really special to go out there and support people who are so focused on not just completing the race, which they did. They were very focused on getting their race completed, but they're also concerned about making sure that they're a light to the kingdom as well while they're out there. Our run of the week comes from Travis Hess, again, from this weekend's race, another marathoner. He said, so even though I didn't achieve any of my personal goals yesterday, I gave it my all and finished marathon number 8. God is so good. He received all the glory on this day. Dozens of people commented on my singlet, and they were all positive. The heat and humidity were definitely factors. One day was just not enough time to acclimate. I loved seeing and meeting the whole Run for God Upwards running group who were able to make it. I think Travis, I don't think he was the fastest of our marathoners. I know he wanted to run a little bit faster, but he finished just over 4 hours.
Yeah.
So he did a lot better than he wants to admit he did. But I remember seeing him. He came by, the way the race worked, they went out and they came back by the starting area at 5 miles into the race. He looked so good. He was so positive. He was smiling. He had a bounce to his step and everything. Well, I didn't see him again until just a few hundred meters from the finish. And he looked a lot different. By that point, you could tell the heat had really gotten to him. But he did it. And finished, and it was fun to see. One of the things about heat that people don't pay attention to, especially in this case where, he lives in Pennsylvania. You live in Pennsylvania, you're running in all this cold weather, and then you come down and you try to run in the heat. It's tough. What happens is our blood volume goes down during the winter time. And so we don't have enough blood to fill up our veins. When it gets hot, your blood vessels, they dilate, so they get bigger. And you don't have enough blood to fill them up. And so if you don't have enough blood to fill them up, you can't get enough blood up into your brain, and you start to get a little dizzy and lightheaded and things like that. And it's not because you're dehydrated. It's because you don't have the blood volume, which is technically dehydration, but it's not because you didn't drink enough is what I guess what I'm saying. And so people need to understand that when it first gets warm out, go out there every day and be cautious, extra cautious, but get out there. And your body will get used to it, and it'll build that volume up, and you'll be fine, but it takes time.
Yeah, and I think people underestimate how long that takes. That's why I'm curious. I would love to. I'm going to see if my watch does that because, I mean, you were there for, 3 days?
Yeah.
And it told you you're only 15% acclimated, which kind of holds true. You know, of course, heat and humidity, we call it poor man's altitude. But, you know, when you go to altitude, it takes you 2 weeks or so to get acclimated to altitude. And I would think going to heat for different reasons, but a lot of the same reasons, it takes you a while to get acclimated there. So you want to keep that in mind, especially if you're going from like Pennsylvania to St. Pete in the wintertime. It's a big difference. So you want to give yourself plenty of, and I know most people we can't just load up and go 2 weeks early to a race, but you want to keep that in mind or at least adjust your expectations.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing.
Yeah,
is you can't do anything about the conditions, but you can adjust the expectations. Maybe go out a little bit slower, knowing that you're not going to be able to hold that pace that you would have had you run the race. In Pennsylvania.
Because I think a lot of people go not thinking about that. They're going out slower. They're not able to hit their marks, and they get frustrated and discouraged. When in reality, they shouldn't.
Yeah, I remember running my first Boston Marathon. It was really hot. It got up to 87 degrees that day, and I remember thinking about how poorly I had run because I'd missed my target by like almost 10 minutes. And I thought, man, that's just horrible. Well, it turns out it was my highest finish I've ever finished at Boston. It was like, I was just over 300, like 307 or something like that. It was really a good race, but it didn't feel like it. But it was because my expectations were too high.
But the fact that it was your best finish place-wise of all your races indicates that everybody was dealing with the same thing.
That's right.
We should naturally celebrate that, but you were probably bummed out because you were looking at a watch and not your place.
Whereas what I should have said was I should have been shooting for 10 minutes slower rather than So anyway, it's all good. Travis, I got a chance to have dinner with Travis one night too. Him and George.
I saw the pictures.
And it was fun to get a chance to talk to him and get to know him a little bit. So it's funny how he was one of those. You remember when you tell the story about Madonna when she walked up and you were like, "Oh, there's Madonna!" Like you'd known her forever and you'd seen her a million times.
Same way
and
with Travis.
Same thing with Travis. So that was pretty cool.
So I need to do a little update. And I'm trying to figure out where I was looking for it. I couldn't remember if he emailed me or texted me. But Rhonda Williams' husband sent me a correspondence. I don't know if it was a text or I can't find it. But he's a private contractor for the aerospace community. And he said that he wants to sit down with you and I at some point and explain. He heard the whole NASA Elon Musk back and forth. And he said there are very good reasons, which we agree with. I think we talked about that there's logical reasons why it takes, but he wants to sit down with us and explain that one day.
All right.
So I'm going to take him up on that. Because I would love to hear from one side versus the other how that works.
Yeah.
But he shot me a message and said, "Hey, we need to sit down and talk about this." So
I'm all in. He didn't even mention it while we were there. He was there.
Really?
This past weekend. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He won an age group award, as a matter of fact.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. He wants to sit us down one day and talk about it. So
all right.
That'd be a lot of fun.
I'm up for it.
Yeah.
Our trivia question from last week: which running shoe company has the highest share of the market in the United States? This question turned out to be a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be. I just thought it was just going to be, hey, everybody knows. Well, it's not that simple.
No.
Because when I say which company has the highest share of running shoe market, what do you count as a running shoe? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of shoes out there that look like running shoes, but they're not really running shoes. And then there's people who buy running shoes to not run necessarily. Mm-hmm. They just buy them because they're comfortable. And so what I really mean is who has the highest market share value of running shoes for running? And
right.
So what I did was I went and I found an AI that I could ask this question to that I knew would go out there and find good information. I don't know if you've used this Perplexity. It's an AI thing that you can give it all the queries you want all day long, and it's a lot better than Google is.
Really?
Yes, way better. And so I used Perplexity and asked it to tell me what the market share was as sold through running shoe stores, because those are 99% going to be for running and or walking. And so I figured that was the best place to look. And so this is what I got from that. Brooks has a 25% market share in running shoe stores. Hoka has 24%, so they're just behind them. But then third place is way back at New Balance at 10%, On at 10%, Saucony at 9%, Asics at 7%, UFOs at 5%, and then Ultra at 4.8%.
Does that make sense to you, or are you skeptical of that?
No, I'm not skeptical of those numbers as sold in running shoe stores. And here's why I tell you that, because I know you're looking at that and you're going, Nike's not on there. Why isn't Nike
on there? Well, no, I'm looking at
Asics
Asics being way down there, because based on what Mike told us, Asics was a lot higher. I don't remember the number he said, but it may be because he don't sell.
Yeah, I don't think he's
some of the others.
Yeah, he doesn't. He sells Brooks and Hoka, On. He doesn't sell new. I don't.
So
think
maybe New Balance filled that gap there, and it was a much higher percentage. But yeah, Asics is the one that's really standing out to me.
And it could be just different. Their market.
Sure,
it is a little bit different in that particular market. But overall, I think these numbers are probably good. But the weird one here is Nike, because if you went and Googled it, Google will tell you Nike is the leader, and they're not even on this list. Well, Nike changed their model a few years ago and decided they weren't going to sell as many running shoes through running shoe stores as they used to. And so now they sell a lot of their shoes direct. They sell them through, they have this model where they team with schools, and they sell them through these agents who sell directly to the schools. And so they don't go through a running shoe store or anything. They go straight from Nike into the hands of the consumer.
What's the Nike? It's the fairly inexpensive
Nike Pegasus.
Pegasus, yeah. Is it Pegasus? Isn't it one of the number one best-selling running shoes of all time?
Oh yeah, it's been around. It was around back when I was selling running shoes in the early 80s.
So it may be up there in that ranking. Yeah, but simply for years past.
Well, Nike used to be number one by a long way.
Right. Yeah.
And over the years, that has
I just
eroded.
wonder where the Pegasus, if you just took models, where it would still rank. Because I would still think it would be up there, wouldn't you?
I think it'd be up there a little bit, but it wouldn't be. It might not be in the top 10.
Yeah.
I don't think. Yeah.
But I think the difference is if you think of Nike, I mean, that's the only one you think of, or at least I do. But when you think of Brooks and all these others, they have 5 or 6 different models
that are up there.
Shoes. Yeah,
that could be. That could be. Either way, I think these are the numbers. I will accept as a winning bid. I will accept either Nike or Brooks. Either one of those could be argued that they're number one. Adidas is another one that wasn't on here. You noticed, and they do. I think they're similar to the way that Adidas has decided for some odd reason not to sell through running shoe stores. That's been a conscious decision on their part. And so it's hard to get this number, I guess, is what is the bottom line. But I still say just go and find what you like and use what you like. I'm a Saucony guy myself. Even when I try to go away from Saucony to something else, I always come back. It just seems like, I don't know, my feet just seem to like their shoes for whatever reason.
That's me and Asics.
Yeah.
I've tried to go away and
always come back. So just find something you like and run with that shoe, and don't worry about what the most popular brand or whatever is. Find something you like, stick with it.
And by the way, I listened to this past few days when I was out of town, I listened to Mike's podcast. What a great podcast.
He did a great job, didn't he?
He did, yeah. I mean, he's so knowledgeable on the subject of shoe, and then all the other things he talked about. His daughter in the car wreck, I'm telling you what, I was about to boo-hoo walking down the road, listening to that. And I texted him. I said, man, that's just a great, unfortunate, but a great story. I mean, the way he's using it to shine the light of Christ to people. But, man, he great interview.
Yeah. If you haven't heard the Mike Cosentino interview as one of our podcasts, but go back and listen to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Upward Sports equips churches to run self-sustaining sports ministries in their communities. Whether you're a sports fanatic or on staff at a church, Upward Sports will give you all the tools you need to run a first-class sports ministry that allows you to reach families in your community. Upward Sports offers basketball, soccer, flag football, cheerleading, volleyball, baseball, and softball through league and camp offerings. At Upward Sports, we want to help your church make a difference and give you increased opportunities to share the gospel. Learn more today at upward.org. That's upward.org.
So the latest controversy, it seems, is sodium bicarbonate. Have you heard of this?
I haven't heard of this.
Okay, well, I just saw this big thread this past weekend on this. And
sodium bicarbonate, isn't that like baking soda?
It's baking soda.
Okay.
It's baking soda. But what people are doing and have been doing now for a few years is they take it before their workouts. What happens with baking soda?
Really?
Yeah. What happens with baking soda or sodium bicarbonate is that it increases your pH. So what happens when your body, when you get fatigued, what happens is you go into acidosis. The makeup of your blood gets more acidic. Mm-hmm. And that's what causes that they call it lactic acid for a reason, right? So this delays the onset of that particular problem. And so for like middle distance runners, they're saying that this is a big deal. And so some people think that is the reason that we have seen so many increases in performance. Some people have gone, from being pretty good to world class in no time, and they think that maybe some of it has to do with this sodium bicarbonate. I don't know. I do know this: sodium bicarbonate is banned for racehorses.
I was going to ask is it on the banned substance?
No, it's not. It's perfectly legal, just like
is that
caffeine
healthy? Is that healthy? Just take a spoonful
baking soda's
of baking
fine.
soda?
Some people brush their teeth with it. So.
Yeah, but I just something feels wrong about taking a spoonful of baking soda.
Tums are sodium bicarbonate.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I mean it's not dangerous. It's okay, and apparently for some people it works. I think this may be one of those things that some people respond to really well, and other people maybe not so much.
Yeah.
But it is banned in racehorses, but it's mostly because of the way they have to give it to racehorses. Racehorses, you can't just give them a pill and have them swallow it.
Yeah.
So they kind of pump it into their stomach, and it's kind of a dangerous procedure.
Yeah.
And so that's why they've outlawed it for racehorses. So nothing to do with the danger of having it in your system as much as it is. But if they feel like it increases the performance of a horse, mm-hmm. obviously there's some reason to believe it would be good for us as well. So,
I'm going to bring something up, and I'm proud that I'm bringing it up before you. I saw where Jared Naguse and then Ingebrigtsen broke the indoor mile. Was that?
Well, I haven't gotten to that yet. You're getting way ahead of me there.
No.
We've got that on the
my bad.
Yeah.
Well, I beat you to it, didn't
yes.
you?
Yes.
I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Now, I didn't hear Ingebrigtsen did it too. I heard Jared Naguse broke the indoor mile record.
Ingebrigtsen did it 2 days later.
Ingebrigtsen came back and did it.
Yes, I've got one up on Dean on track and field.
Yeah, you do. That's crazy.
Unless it was fake news or whatever, but I don't think it was.
Yeah, I hadn't heard it. I hadn't heard the second one.
Sorry, Dean.
That's all right. That's all right. Anyway, it's hard to figure out what's causing so much improvement in track and field times these days because there's so much out there.
Yeah.
The tracks, the shoes, there's so much that seems to be making a difference. And I hope that a good portion of that improvement is not illegal drugs.
Right.
So that's just my
something hope. About eating baking soda just feels like an illegal drug. I don't know.
I don't know. I've got a jar of these sodium bicarbonate tablets.
Really?
I've tried it. I've taken like 4 or 5 of them before running. It doesn't feel like there's any difference when I just go out and run. So I really haven't had a chance to try it with
sodium
workouts.
Bicarbonate, does it help your sodium, or is that a completely? I'm not a chemist.
That's a whole different thing.
Okay, so sodium and sodium bicarbonate have nothing to do with each other.
I don't think so. Yeah,
because you need sodium.
Yeah,
especially in the latter parts of.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, this week's story is about community. How important is your training group to your success? And how important is your spiritual life to your spiritual life is your church to that spiritual life? This one comes from Rebecca Taylor. It's called The Role of Community. Running isn't really known as a team sport. I first started running because I was utterly dreadful of any sport involving large amounts of coordination. Shoot a ball through a hoop? Not really. Put one foot in front of the other? I can handle that. The individual nature of the sport, the concept of going at my own pace and striving for personal goals is one of the things that first attracted me to running. I had been running for about 10 years and completed races ranging from 1 mile to the half marathon distances when Run for God first popped up on my radar. I tossed the idea out to a friend at church and it took off from there. We decided to host a Run for God class at our church with my friend and I as co-leaders. The initial response was amazing. I could not believe the number of people who were interested in attempting a 5K race. We had over 50 individuals come out for the first meeting and group run. I admit that I had concerns. I had participated in training groups before, but this was my first experience leading one. As the class progressed, we had many people drop out due to the injuries, recoveries, sicknesses, and could not catch up in their training, and some simply decided that the program wasn't for them. The group that remained, however, shared something special. They didn't try to go it alone. They learned how to rely on the encouragement and support of the group to push through difficult times. They resolved to do their best, even if that meant walking on race day. We set up a Facebook group for our class, and members posted their workouts, asked training questions, and connected to the class even when they could not make meetings. It provided a forum for positive feedback on progress and helped members know they were not alone as they squeezed in windy, cold, or soggy workouts during the week. It also gave members some accountability for keeping up with their training. Over and over, class members mentioned how much easier it was to run together than it was to go solo. Many members started searching for running buddies. Over the course of the 12-week program, it was amazing to see what people could overcome. Those who struggled through the first 60-second runs were running 3 miles straight by week 9. Some never saw themselves as runners, but began running under 9-minute pace and were looking at future races before we even finished the program. A few who caught the flu or had injuries and missed several weeks of training still came back to finish out the program. Many reported weight loss, improved sleep, and a healthier respect for the food they put in their bodies. With our class, the most successful people were the ones who stayed plugged in. They appreciated encouraging words when they received them and passed them along to others when needed. They recognized that even though we all have different time or distance goals, we all have the same hurdles to overcome each day. We all need words of encouragement through the lousy day at work and hectic schedule or poor night's rest, all of which can leave our legs feeling dead for an evening run. We are better together. The same applies to our walks with Christ. It is an individual relationship that needs to be pursued with personal discipline, but we need each other to be truly healthy and successful. I can be a runner while logging countless miles alone. I will be a better runner when I'm connected to a larger group of people who share my values and push me to strive for higher goals. In the same way, we can be Christians by accepting Jesus as our Savior and then reading His Word on our own, as we should. We are healthier and stronger Christians when we are connected to a larger group of believers who share our values, encourage us, and hold us accountable for how we live our lives. The Bible is clear about the need for fellowship in the church. We are told to meet together, encourage one another, and even confess our sins to one another. Just as it helps motivate us to run when we know we're not alone in the pursuit of a goal, it helps us remain faithful to Christ to know that we are not alone in the battles we fight and the stands we take. Just as hearing about another runner's workout can inspire us to make the time for one of our own, accountability for practicing spiritual disciplines like prayer, scripture memory, and fasting can encourage us to keep opening the Word. Just as the encouragement of a friend can help us come back after a running setback, the kind words of a fellow believer can refocus us and help us overcome the spiritual setbacks and challenges we face. And just as being around more experienced runners can help us set our goals higher, being around more mature Christians can help keep us aiming for a closer and more vibrant relationship with Jesus Christ. In the end, we had over 20 people complete the 5K race at the completion of the program. Everyone who made it to the starting line also made it to the finish line, and each one had an individual story to tell of the challenges he or she faced. Staying connected makes a difference, both in our pursuit of our running goals and the pursuit of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Man, that was just that was a great story, Rebecca. I mean, this is one of the things that we talk about so much. It's the reason for Run Club.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. I think about how many people have sent us messages, and, it's the snarky comments like, why would I pay to be part of a club when I can go Google all this and get it online? Well, we've never been shy about that fact. I mean, you can. Mm-hmm. But I feel like what we've built here, and we've always said that it's the Run Club community, the social aspects of it is worth the price of entry itself. We're building a group of people, we say like-minded people, who pray together, they run, they walk together, they're in communities in their own community, and they're part of a bigger community. Just this past week, I was talking to these new churches, and that's the one thing I really pointed out to them is this is the running community in your church. This is exactly what your church does for your community. We do for this group of runners and walkers, and it's the single most important thing you can do in any discipline is having a community around you. Because yes, you can go Google a Couch to 5K training plan. We've never disputed that. You can go Google all the training principles. We've never disputed that. But we take all these things and we put it in a package and we do it inside of a community that's going to love on you, pray for you. They're going to help you through hard times. You're going to help them through hard times. And it's the culmination of all that is what makes this club incredible.
Yeah. That what makes this drives me crazy sometimes to think about. It makes my brain hurt to think about this, that Facebook, we talk about our Facebook group. Mm-hmm. Facebook is what built Run Club. Mm-hmm. Basically, that's what pulled us together as a community because we're all over the country, all over the world, frankly. And that's what pulled us together was Facebook. But it's also social media that lets people go out on their own and not be part of a community.
Right.
In the past, before social media, it was hard not to be part of a community. You almost had to be part of some community.
Sure.
But now with social media, you can be so withdrawn,
be
part of an online community, and not really be part of a community. And so I'm so conflicted sometimes because the Run Club page has been great over the years.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what's transitioning now to the Upward Running app. Just so everyone knows, I want to be clear that Facebook group, the Upward Running group that everybody knows, over the next several months, that is going to be transitioning to inside the Upward Running app. Because the Facebook group has always been great, but one thing that the new app is allowing us to do is we also have breakout rooms. So we have the national group inside the app, but we also have groups like Iron Sharpening Iron, the women's only group, the Chasing Big Goals group, the Walkers group, the Moms group. We have all these different breakout rooms so you can get an even more intimate community of people who are really drilled down exactly like Iron Sharpening Iron. That's a men's only group. If you log in and you're a lady, you're not even going to see that as an option.
Yep.
When I log in as a man, I'm not even going to see the ladies only group. And so we have all these different groups, but that is I mean, yes, the training is important. Yes, the education is important. But the most important thing is what is going to get you out the door every day. Yep. And the accountability and the motivation from others is what does that best.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, having said that, also realize that you need some personal motivation as well.
Sure.
You can't just rely on external motivation all the time. But just knowing that there's a group out there that's paying attention to what you're doing is external motivation enough for me to internally motivate myself to do what I need to do a lot of times, right?
Yeah.
Hebrews 10:25 says, "Not forsaking the assembly of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching."
This is the church.
Right.
This is the local church.
I've seen so many people over the years that have said, well, I don't need a church to be a Christian. And you know what? If you said that, you're right. You don't have to be in a church to be a Christian. But I thought about it from this context. Recently, this past year, I ran a few ultra marathons. Mm-hmm. I had never run those before. Mm-hmm. It has made my running experience richer to have done something more and outside of the things I have done before. It expanded not just my running knowledge, my running experience, the people I connect with. It's expanded me in so many ways as a runner, even though I've run my whole life, basically. Church is that way. Church is a place where you can go and sure, you can spend lots of time in the Bible on your own and in prayer, and we should. Mm-hmm. But going to church, it takes that personal relationship we have and makes it flourish and seems so much deeper and richer than it would if we didn't have that, right?
And it makes this thing called our walk with Christ easier. I mean, to say, yeah, I'm a Christian and I don't need a church is like saying, yeah, I'm a runner who's going to run the Boston Marathon, but I don't need a training plan. You're right. But one way is so much easier and so much more satisfying than the other.
Well, I think part of it is maybe it's the other way around, though. Do you think that maybe it's sort of like training and never having any kind of a race or a gathering? Isn't that to not having a church?
Either or,
right?
Yeah.
It's like just train, and never get that experience of the race day payoff. Right. Oh, you're just missing out.
And you can never talk about it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably the hardest part, especially for us runners. We like to talk about it.
That's right.
And if we're full of Jesus and that's what making us who we are, then we should want to talk about it. We should want to gather together. We should want to go to those races, in air quotes, that's called the church, and be around others who are like us, because that's what fills our cup so that when we go out into the world, what's overflowing spills out onto those who don't know Jesus. That's where the magic happens. And that's why every time we talk about the social component of what we do here at Upward Running, that by itself is worth the price of entry.
Yep. Amen. 1 Thessalonians 5:11 says, "Therefore comfort each other and edify one another, just as you also are doing." Comfort and edify are two different things. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times we kind of squish those together like it's one thing. They're two different things, and they're both really important. I mentioned last week that there was a book that I was reading, and the guy that wrote the book is an atheist, and he's out on this trip because he's drowning in he lost his wife and his daughter, and he's just drowning in self-pity. And I get it. I mean, that would be tough. I can't imagine putting myself in his shoes. But if he had a church, he would have those folks would be all around him. They would all be encouraging him. They would be comforting him, making him feel like he's needed and like there's a reason for him to continue on, which in this book feels like he doesn't see a reason to keep going. Mm-hmm. But then they also, edifying is a whole different thing, because it means building one another up. It means the people in your church helping you with whatever that issue is that you have, by trying to say, hey, you can overcome this. Here's a source. Mm-hmm. Here's something you need. Here's whatever it is that can build you up and make you believe that you can overcome it. We see it in running all the time. When I was in in St. Pete this weekend, and I ran out to somewhere around the 7-mile mark to catch people as they were running by. Now, don't you know that those people, as they were running, and they're thinking, oh, gosh, I still got half a race to go, those half marathoners. And all of a sudden they see a friendly face that's putting their arm around them and saying, hey, come on, you can do it. You look great. Keep it up. Don't you know that pumps them up?
Yeah.
We need that. We need that.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows I listen to Dave Ramsey, and one thing he always says when somebody calls in and they're going through something heavy and they're attributing it to their finances. You know, when we go through heavy things, we always want to attach it to something, but it's usually always misplaced. And one thing that he always talks to people through when he talks them through these struggles is the first question he asks. The first question he asks is not, do you have money? The first question he asks is, are you part of a good church?
Yeah.
And you can tell people are scratching their head like, what does that have to do? And that has everything to do with everything we're talking about, because that is our source of hope. Jesus is our source of hope. And if you're going through something bad, oftentimes you can't see that, but you can see it in other people, because we're always at different stages of life, right?
That's
I
right.
might be on a mountaintop, you might be down in a valley. And when we go to church and we get to talking and we love on each other and hugging each other, I'm bringing you up, because next week, guess what might happen?
That's right.
I might be down in that valley. You're on that mountaintop. And I don't understand how people do it who don't go to church. And I don't want to make this podcast all about going to church, because that's not our salvation.
No.
People are correct when they say that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see how you walk through this life and not have that community around you, because so many times I've went to church just down in the dumps about whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I leave just invigorated. And at the same time, I go to church and I think, man, this is great. I really don't need to go today. I don't need to be filled. But my friend, I get there and I realize, oh man, he's going through some heavy stuff. I can't imagine walking through a loss of a family member or all these different things that we know are big valleys in our life. I can't imagine doing it without others around me. In the same way, I can't imagine going through a couch to marathon, for example, without some kind of outlet, some kind of community around me to say, oh man, this is hard. I don't know how many times I go on Run Club and you see somebody saying, this is hard.
Yeah.
And you see 25 comments just coming into the rescue.
Yep.
And that's what it's all about.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And you know what's interesting, because you gave me this picture as you're describing going to church of charging our batteries when we go to church.
Yeah.
And then we're run down by the next week and we recharge our batteries. But even in those times when we meet up with that person who needs some edification and they need some building up, I think that charges our batteries. Even though it's energized, we have to use a lot of energy to cheer that person up. It charges our batteries because we know we're helping.
That's God.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
What other kind of energy give and take do you see where both go up?
Yeah.
I mean, that
right.
only God can do that.
That's right. Ecclesiastes 4:9-10 says, 2 are better than one, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one will lift up his companion. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him up. Man, I've always loved this verse. And this verse never comes to mind when it should. I don't know why it doesn't, but it's such a good verse. And you mentioned it just a minute ago. When you're down, I should pick you up. Mm-hmm. And when I'm down, you should pick me up. It's just the way that we're supposed to be and the way God made us. And gosh, it's such a sad, but woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him up. Isn't that a sad verse?
Anytime you hear woe to him in the Bible, that's a grim picture, for sure.
I think about this verse in the context of marriage. I think about the things that Debbie is so good at, and that she helps me, and she basically makes up for my shortcomings because I'm so bad at certain things and she's so good at these things. And then there's other things where I'm a little better than she is at certain things, and I can help her. And
I bet her list is longer though.
Her list of things she's good at, way longer, way longer. But it's it's being together and helping each other out. And we're honestly stronger together than we would be if we were separate. And that's an awesome feeling.
Yeah. It's that way all the way around with marriage. I mean, you hear about what is it they call the marriage bump, even in finances. You know, you earn more money because you're better at the things you do simply because you're married. And that's a proven statistic there. And I think it goes in our walk with Christ as well. That's why it's so critical to be equally yoked. Because when you are and you're working for the same thing, you're charging toward the same goal, you're going to be better and stronger at it.
Amen. Here's some questions here. What are some of the positive words a fellow runner has shared with you that have helped you overcome discouragement or a setback? How can you pass that encouragement along to another runner who may need it? How is this a reflection of Jesus Christ to others? I remember a 10K that I was running one time, and it was one of those out and back courses. And at the start, I felt fine. And I still don't, to this day, don't know what happened in that race, but it was a debacle. It was maybe the worst race I've ever run. It was that bad. And I just completely fell apart on the way back in. And some guy comes running by me. And as he's coming by me, the guy slows down just for a minute as he's going by. And he says, listen, first he asked me, are you okay? And because he recognized that I was running a lot slower than I normally do. And I said, yeah, I don't know what's going on, but I'm okay. And he said, listen, I just want you to know you're an inspiration to us out here. And I was like, that was really nice to hear. It's really nice for somebody to say that. And he, as if he heard me kind of taking that as a superficial thing. And he said, no, I want you to understand. We really appreciate who you are and what you stand for. And I remember how much it meant to me that I remember it to this day. It made that whole bad race.
Perspective.
Yeah, it just changed everything. It was like I had a bad race. Oh, well, normally I'd be down in the dumps afterwards and thinking, oh my gosh, my world's falling apart.
Yeah.
Not that day. So that was probably the one time I remember just somebody being so going out of their way to be incredibly nice to try to lift me up in the middle of a running situation.
And we have to understand too that our words can also have the opposite effect. You can tear somebody down. And I don't know why when I read this, even though it said positive words, my mind immediately went to a negative situation that happened to me in a race. And I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but I was running the what's the big lake up on the mountain in
Lula?
No, the
Raccoon Mountain.
Around the rim, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was running the Raccoon Mountain race, and I was nearing the finish, and I felt good. I was, proud of myself. That was back in my faster days, and I was clipping a pretty good time. And I come up beside this kid, and I ran up beside him, and I'm like, man, you're doing awesome. Just really trying to encourage this kid. And he said, oh, I'm on my cool down. It was little Jesse Martinez. He was probably 9 or 10 years old. Yeah. And it's like my confidence, self-esteem, everything went out the window. And I just wanted to trip him at that point. Great kid. But he was like, I'm on my cool down. Thanks anyway.
But being 9 years old.
Never tell you that again.
Yeah. He didn't realize what he was doing.
Yeah. But he was proud of it. He was like, oh, no, I'm on my cool down. Don't worry, old man.
That's a funny story. I find I just feel like it's easy, especially in a running context, to be encouraging to other people because you know how hard it is. And when you know how hard it is, it's really easy. I mean, I so enjoyed this past weekend getting out there and just cheering. I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anybody. And I mean, it's exhausting. To do it.
It is, yeah.
But it's so much fun.
Yeah.
I was worn out more from doing that than I would be doing a long run myself. But it was so worth it. Totally worth it. In the story, the case is made that our spiritual walks are both an individual and team effort. In what ways is your spiritual life just between you and God, individual? In what ways does it involve your church or parachurch organizations, your team? Again, you already mentioned this, but just a caveat. The main thing that we have to realize, and if you don't hear us say anything else, make sure that you understand this. Your salvation is a one-on-one relationship with Christ. Mm-hmm. It is not your church.
Sure.
And so make sure that we don't want there to be any kind. We're talking saying a lot of good things about churches, and we feel like church is really important. But your relationship with God is the linchpin to your salvation. Mm-hmm. So make sure you don't hear us. Make sure you understand that for sure. But our churches, and so we have to spend this time on our own developing and nurturing that relationship. Because like I mentioned my wife earlier, if Debbie and I, when we're spending time apart, we're never trying, or if we never nurture our relationship, we're not going to want to hang around with each other. Mm-hmm. And if we don't nurture our relationship with God, then being around other people mm-hmm. who love God mm-hmm. is not going to be any fun. Well, what's going to be there's no reason for it. There's no excitement about it. If somebody's not a runner, they don't want to hang around with a bunch of runners mm-hmm. because you're not going to be talking about the things they want to talk about. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing that goes for us in our relationship. Our individual relationship is important to making that group relationship more fruitful.
My pastor, Charlie, he made a comment years and years ago, and what you just said brought it to mind. But he once said, whether in both your salvation and your walk, while those are deeply personal things, they should not be private. Mm. And that I remember when he said that, it took me a minute because we kind of think that's kind of the same thing, ain't it? But no, it's not. It's personal to you.
Yeah.
A lot of people say about baptism, I just don't see the need. That's a private thing. No, it's not. It's personal. It's deeply personal. Mm-hmm. But our walk, our faith, our salvation has nowhere in the Bible where you see that that's to be private. It's personal, but we should live that out with others and sharing it with others, because that's accountability, right?
Yeah.
If we keep everything private, only bad things happen in private. That's where the devil operates. The devil wants to keep you quiet. He don't want you to share your struggles. And as Christians, we don't need to go tell the guy on the street everything that we're going through, but that's why it's important to have those around you who will hold you accountable, who you can tell anything to, and they're going to help you walk through that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a great point. This is another reason why I think the group aspect is so important. This past week, I was at church, and one of my friends there at church, he brought up Mark chapter 16. We were talking, I don't know how we got to this. I know this is it's a crazy subject, but we were talking about the snake handling churches. And, so we started talking about that a little bit. And then he pointed out Mark chapter 16 and the portion of Mark chapter 16 that is in some Bibles, but not all Bibles. And mm-hmm. it's an interesting thing. And it made me, because we talked about it just a little bit, I was like, I don't know as much about that subject as I want to know. Mm-hmm. And it made me want to go home and really dig in and understand more about that thing. That happened to you recently about one particular subject. Mm-hmm. I remember that you were like, I got to dig into that. And you spent weeks digging into that thing.
It was an abyss.
Yeah. Yeah. But
I'm better for it.
Yes.
Nothing changed about my view on that subject. I still have the same beliefs, but now I know why. And I think that's where sometimes we can be dangerous as Christians, is we understand the surface level of, we say, I don't believe that, or I do believe that. But many times, especially in our society today, people ask you why. And you need to be ready to answer that question. Mm-hmm. Why is it that you believe what you believe? Yes, some things we have to take on faith. But other things, it's there for us to understand. It's there for us to do our own research on and read about it and understand it. And a lot of times that can hurt you. It could have me in this situation. What we're talking about is somebody asked me about something. I said, no, I don't believe that. And then that night, I really got convicted because I didn't know why.
Yeah.
The only reason I didn't believe it is because my pastor didn't. Well, I completely trust my pastor, but that's never the right answer.
That's right.
Even my pastor will tell you that.
Yeah.
Go do your own research.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And that's another reason to meet, so we can kind of get these things that get us excited about getting into the Word.
Yeah.
Last question. How connected are you to a local body of believers? Are there areas of your spiritual life, prayer, Bible study, accountability, etc., that would benefit from increased involvement in a church? If so, what are some practical steps you can take to get active in ministry?
Start.
Just start. Just get out there and get involved. There's places in your church to be plugged in. There's something in your church where you can be helpful to the church. And there's always people in the church that are looking for some help in a certain area. Mm-hmm. And if you'll just ask, they'll give it to you.
Yeah.
It would be difficult for me to be more involved than I am.
Yeah, I mean, you're like me. I mean, my church is my family.
Yeah.
I mean, it is an extension of my immediate family. And, I mean, do I always agree? This is where we get off the rails. Do I always agree with my brother? No. Do I say, I'm leaving my family? No.
Right.
That would be foolish.
Right.
But for some reason, with our churches nowadays, we feel that that's okay. And it's not.
No.
It's your Now, are there things that can make it to where you need to move churches? Yes. By and large, the things that we leave our churches for are not those reasons.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to leave it there, and because that's just as convicting to hear me say it. Because, I mean, we're all humans. We all think differently. I think it should be green carpet, and somebody else is going to think it should be blue carpet. And we might be passionate about the green and the blue carpet. Should we leave the church over it? No. Absolutely not.
Yeah. So if you're out there and you've had a bad taste in your mouth from some church experience, please give it another shot. If you're not in church because of that, and because I've heard that a number of times, that somebody's, they're all a bunch of hypocrites in there or something.
They're right.
Yeah, they're
right.
We all are.
Yeah.
But one more won't hurt.
Yeah, and if you say they, you need to look in the mirror.
That's
because it's we.
Yeah. So, but find a church and get plugged in, and it'll make a difference in your relationship with Christ. I guarantee it. Upward Sports Run for God Run Club is the best way to stay motivated for your fitness journey and your faith journey. You get these weekly podcasts, but there is so much more. We have proven training plans available for you, whether you're just at the beginning of your fitness quest or you've been running for 20 years. We have something for everyone, and it doesn't matter where you are with God either. We have something for you there, too. If you're not a member, join today at runforgod.com. It is the best value you will find. All right, so they had a half marathon and a 10K in Hong Kong where 3 of the podium athletes were disqualified for wearing the wrong bibs. So the first and second place runners in the half marathon and the second and sixth place runners in the 10K, apparently, all 4 runners, they all had the same agent. So apparently what happened was the agent handed out numbers to his runners and he handed out the wrong numbers to the wrong runners. Here's the question. How strictly should we follow rules like that? Should that be something that gets them DQ'd? They did DQ them. Should they have DQ'd them? What's your opinion on that?
To me, there should be some grace there, because having a different bib, I don't know. We've had these quandaries before.
It's hard. It's a hard choice.
I mean, the bib doesn't give you any kind of competitive advantage.
Right.
It's obvious who ran what times.
And what happened.
But rules are rules.
Yeah.
I can't imagine being the guy that was going to go from third to second or third to first. I wouldn't want to be him, because I wouldn't want to. I guess the question you got to ask is who pushed it.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know the answer.
There?
I didn't read the details of the story.
I don't.
If the officials decided, then all right, the officials have a choice to make, and they've got to fall one way or the other. And I'm with the officials either way, if they decided not to or decided to.
You know, we've talked about circumstances in the past where a high school athlete, or I can't remember the exact, but they go run a pro race and then they're DQ'd from running their high school races anymore. I kind of get that, because the fact that you ran a pro race, that is an inherently a competitive advantage when you're.
Well, and it wasn't by accident.
Right. They meant to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
so I don't know about this one. This one's tough. What do you think?
Well, the one I tend to think you kind of have to follow that rule, because what happens? What if somebody wants to run with somebody else's bib and break and qualify them for Boston? Let's say you can't allow that. So you wouldn't allow some. Of course, in that case, it's intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a hard thing.
You're trying to be somebody else. These people weren't trying to be somebody else.
That's true.
It's just,
and they know it. They know who they were.
Clerical error, basically, is what it was.
Yeah, I just don't. Yeah, I think I'm leaning on the side of I don't think it matters. The worst case of this I saw where the officials just went too far was in a state track meet in the state of Georgia, down in Albany, Georgia, and they are notorious for everything's black and white and that kind of thing. And this poor kid gets to the starting line. He's doing the hurdles, the 110-meter hurdles, and he's on the starting line. Well, it turns out he's wearing these like 3/4 length tights. Mm-hmm. His other teammates in other events were wearing shorts. So that's against the rules. You can't do that. Now realize this is an individual event. It's not a relay. It's an individual event. He just happens to wear something that somebody else on his team, he had wore something different earlier. They told him that was an illegal uniform. The guy says, okay. He literally runs from the track, I don't know, 100 feet up into the stands, gets some shorts, puts the shorts on, runs back down to the track. And I'm telling you, the kid was 10 feet from stepping onto the track when the gun went off. You couldn't wait 20 seconds for that kid to get in the starting blocks and start that race. I get that it's a rule. I get that it's the coach's fault. The coach should never have allowed that athlete to get there like that. But sometimes these things happen. I've been a coach at track meets before. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of things going on. You can't be looking at every runner before they go to the starting line. You just can't.
Yeah. And I guess on this one, the only way I can kind of back up the officials is obviously the fact that they're using language like agents, and there's money involved here. I mean, there's payouts. And if I'm an official and the guy that got fourth, this is going to bump him up to second and put him in the money. And he comes and raises if he contests it, at that point, rules are rules.
Yeah.
You would be derelict in your duty if you were the official at that point. Now, did the official, just probably like they do in Albany, make a big deal when nobody was pushing it? That's a different thing. But if somebody contests it, to me, you have to fall back to the rules. Because if he contested it and the officials say, well, it was just a mistake, that's not going to hold water anywhere.
Yeah.
It's just not.
Yeah, maybe that's a good.
I don't know.
Maybe that's a good point. I don't know. It's a hard thing to decide.
It is.
It really is.
If I was an official, I would never raise it.
Yeah, but if somebody brought it up.
To me, you got to go to the rules. If push comes to shove, you've always got to go back to a black and white scenario. Otherwise, I mean, it's what we talk about in our society.
And it could be in that race in Albany, it could be that another coach brought it up. Yeah. I don't know that that's not the case. That may be what happened. And if it
probably was,
then I guess it's a good point.
Officials aren't out there just trying to get you.
Yeah.
They just want to meet to run smoothly.
Yeah.
And they don't believe me, these guys don't make enough money to enjoy trying to play gotcha on people. They just don't.
Yeah. Well, it's a time for Dean's Thoughts. That's a time when I share something I've written about the intersection between running and faith. Well, I was watching some of the volunteers and spectators this past weekend, and I just wanted to talk about them for a few minutes. This is called Staying Until the End. Daniel was packing up his saxophone and backing musical equipment. He had been playing since 7:30 a.m. and was now close to noon. It took a lot of practice to be able to blow into the instrument more or less continuously for over 4 hours. The St. Petersburg Distance Classic, 10K half marathon and marathon participants, I'm sure, were entertained by the soothing music 1/3 of a mile from the finish line that Daniel was providing. For that matter, I was enjoying the equal parts Kenny G and Chuck Mangione-styled music as I cheered for finishers myself. Thousands of people heard Daniel play that morning, and a few dozen did not. Daniel wasn't the only one who packed up and left before the last marathon finishers came by. Even some of the vendors had packed up and left once the awards were given out, even though there were dozens of people who had been out in the Florida heat for 6 hours and were still inching closer to the finish line. There were many more who left, including most of the day's finishers. So let me say this, I don't blame them. Some of them may have had other obligations, and let's face it, after 6 hours, there's a lot of space between runners. It's a long day to stand out there and catch every runner as they go by. This was my first marathon as a spectator waiting for those 7-hour marathoners to finish. It was tough. As a matter of fact, I don't know that it wasn't just as tough as spending 3 of those hours running myself. I get why most people leave before the last handfuls of finishers reach their ultimate goal. That's why those who finish after many people leave are so special to me. When I finish a marathon, there's a bunch of people hanging around the finish line cheering as I finish. It's a blessing for sure. But for those at the back of the pack, it is possible that they have already started packing things up when they arrive at the finish line. For the volunteers, they're looking forward to the last finisher so they can go home and rest. You can't blame them for getting a head start. I thank God for those who understand and are willing to hang around as long as it takes to make that last finisher feel special. Again, please don't hear me dinging any of those volunteers for leaving early, but do hear me say the ones who stay are special people. I'd like to make 2 observations. First, it takes incredible resolve to keep going for 7 or 8 hours, even more so when much of the motivation along the way is gone by the time they get there. As I watched pedestrians walk right out in front of runners as they were in the last mile of their marathon, the runners never wavered. They kept their eyes forward, knowing that every step, whether running or walking, was getting them closer to the finish line. Their focus is inspiring. Second, how special are those people who have a passion for those last finishers? Even though many people were gone that last hour, many people stayed and cheered for every runner as they came by. May God bless all those people. Surely there were some who were still waiting for their runner to come through, but some of them just wanted to make sure those last finishers felt special because they know they are. In the parable of the vineyard in Matthew chapter 20, the Bible tells us, "So the last will be first, and the first last. For many are called, but few are chosen." Matthew wasn't talking about marathoners here, but we know that the people at the back of the pack are every bit as important as the guys who finished in under 3 hours. And in some cases, they're even more blessed, depending on where they stand with Jesus. The Bible also tells us in Matthew 25:40, "And the king will answer and say to them, Assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to the least of one of these, my brethren, you did it to me." God doesn't look down on those who leave the race early, but I believe there's an extra jewel in the heavenly crown of those who take their time to make others feel special.
That's a great story, Dean. Yeah, I mean, we learned this years and years ago that the back of the packer, it's the great thing about teaching a class, teaching a 5K challenge is because you get to understand, and I always like to say it the way you say it. It's not that you look down on the back of the pack. You just never thought about them.
Yeah.
And that's not saying anything bad about you. It's just nature. It's you were getting in the car and going home. But once you recognize them, you can't unsee that.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
It's like, oh man, I've got to be there to see that. And so then it comes to the 5K challenge for coaches out there. I told a guy just this past week who has taught Run for God classes in the past, upward running classes in the past. And he said, you get to the point where it's just as fun to coach and to help those people do that as it is to do it yourself. And I'm sure this weekend you probably got just as much joy doing what you did as you would have winning the race.
Yep.
Because it's once you see them, you can't unsee them.
That's right.
And that's why we encourage people, runners especially, coach one of these programs. You'll never look at the sport the same again.
That's true. One of the most stark incidences I remember was just last year at the Mayberry Half Marathon when we had a runner that was out there and she was taking a long time to get to the finish line. She was past the time that the finish line was closed down, and they had packed up the finish line. Mm-hmm. Everything was gone. But there was this one lady who said, I don't care how long it takes this lady to finish, I'll be here. Mm-hmm. And she had her medal, and she was going to wait for her to get there to that finish line. When she got to the finish line, there was going to be somebody there. And of course, there were some of our folks there as well. But there were people there to make sure that, but so many times we just happened to be there at that race. How many races happen out there where there isn't anybody? The race cutoff is hit and everybody just packs up and leaves. And I wonder if there are races where somebody gets to the finish line, there's nobody there. Mm-hmm. And how sad that is for that person. Although in their mind, they still finished the race, and they did finish the race. Mm-hmm. But I just remember how stark that was to realize all these cars were gone. Everybody was gone. It was all this music and everything that had been being played right there just 30 minutes earlier was all gone. And it was just this quiet finish, and how special that lady was for hanging around and making sure that that person who finished last felt like they were somebody special.
And it's, some organizers get it. We were one of those. If we put on a race, there's nothing getting touched until the last finisher finishes. I think about another one is Ironman. Ironman does this great. Even though they technically have a cutoff, they're there till the last finisher comes in. And the reason is because just like we do, Ironman realizes that, yes, the guy that wins it is pretty special, but he's not the most special.
Yep.
I'll never forget the first year Chattanooga had their Ironman. There was 2 athletes that I coached.
Yep.
They were the last 2 official finishers.
Yep.
Guess whose picture was on the front page of the Chattanooga Times the next day? Yep. Not the guy that won it.
Yeah.
It was the last 2 finishers. And because we all, you hear somebody did Ironman in 8 hours, and then you have somebody else that they did it in 17 hours. Which sounds more impressive? Which sounds more grueling? Let me say it that way.
Yeah, the 17
hours, no question. Yeah. And I would say in a lot of ways it was.
Yeah.
The guy that finished first, he didn't have a blister that took up the whole bottom of his foot.
Yeah.
Like the guy I know that did.
Yep.
He wasn't just wrecked for the next 30 days. And that's not despairing the guy that finished it, because he is incredibly impressive in his own right. But we have to understand that it's those people who really, really, really struggle. They're dealing with so much more than that person in the front.
Yeah. 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 I got a chance to encourage people along that race this past weekend. And there we had some faster folks and we had some slower folks, and all of them were just out there doing the best they could with what they had. Yeah. And it's inspiring to watch. And
it's a picture of Hebrews 12:1 in real life. Yeah. All of us there at the finish line cheering these people on. I'm just convinced that's why God laid Hebrews 12:1 on our hearts to be our flagship verse, because that is the picture, at least in my mind, that's the picture of heaven.
Yeah.
I may not be the first one to get there, but when I get there, man, everybody's going to be cheering.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And I don't know how long this saxophone player that was there he was there over 4 hours.
That's impressive.
I was going to say, from a running standpoint, I can't imagine. I don't know how hard it is to play the saxophone, but playing for 4 hours straight, it's got to be tough.
Yeah.
It's got to be really tough. But it was really cool that he showed up, and so many people that do show up at these things. And, whenever there are times where I'll run a race and I'll get my award and I'll kind of try to sneak out and get going because I've got something else going on that afternoon or whatever. And I feel guilty every time I do it. Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't used to feel guilty doing that. Now I feel guilty when I feel like I have to do that.
Yeah.
But it's all good. And again, just kudos to those people who hang around at the end. And kudos to this particular race. They left that whole finish line area set up. They had these gates for like 100 meters, for the last 100 meters of the race, all closed off. They had all that stuff was still up, 7 hours at the time cut off. So good for them for doing that. And there was a lady out there. She was there the whole time, every finisher, the whole day. She was announcing people's names as they came across. They had a mat where they announced their names. And that woman was as enthusiastic at the end for the last finisher as she was for the first one. And kudos to her and to those folks who put on that race.
Yeah.
At Upward Sports and Run for God, we're all about helping you on your fitness journey. But we also want to support you on your faith journey as well. Sign up today for the self-paced Bible in a Year Challenge and listen every day as I read through the entire Bible in 365 episodes. As a bonus, I also give you running and walking tips of the day and finish with a different encouraging quote in each episode. You must be a Run Club member to participate in this exciting and edifying challenge. Sign up and start listening today.
All right, so we're back. So Dean just got on to me off camera, in case you're wondering. I started talking too quickly. So anyway, what I was going to say is, so we were just talking about the St. Petersburg Distance Classic, and I thought this is a great opportunity to talk about the Big Beach Marathon. So one season is over. We're about to embark on the next season of the Couch to Marathon, which starts on the 24th. Is the next year's kickoff for the Couch to Marathon. So this is going to be the second time we're back at Big Beach. The reason we're going back is because they do an incredible job. It sounds like St. Petersburg did an incredible job too. And as chance would have it, the guys that do those two races are big buddies. And the Big Beach guy actually used to own the Distance Classic, correct? Mike.
And Mike was there this weekend.
Yeah. And so Mike and Nikki, they're just, Nikki's infectious, number one. You can't help but smile when you talk to her. So we're going back to Big Beach Marathon next year. The Couch to Marathon starts this February 24th, just in a few days. But we're also going to do a big push for the half marathon and the 5K. So we're going to have a Couch to Marathon starting in late April, early May. I don't remember the dates. We'll be putting those out there. So you'll have an opportunity to do the Couch to Marathon. You're going to have an opportunity to do the Couch to Half Marathon. And you're going to have the opportunity to do a Couch to 5K, all graduating at this race. And drum roll, everybody's been asking about when we're doing the big get-together, because we're not doing the get-together in Dalton anymore. But the Run Club weekend is going to be the weekend of the Big Beach Marathon. Yeah. So we'll have all the big festivities. We don't know exactly what we're doing yet. We got one person that might be coming who's going to be a pretty huge deal. You're not going to want to miss that. But go ahead and get that on your calendar. The Big Beach Marathon in 2026 is going to be the graduation race for the Couch to Marathon, Couch to Half Marathon, and Couch to 5K.
10K and 5K, isn't it?
Not 10K, just 5K.
Okay. Mike told me they were going to add a 10K as well.
Well, that's news to me.
That's what he told me. So I don't know.
Because we got them to change. They had a 7K.
Right.
That we got them to change to a 5K, because 7K just makes no sense to me.
He said he's still got to figure out the logistics of it, but his intention.
Okay, well, that's news.
Is to do
that's
5K.
Breaking news.
Yes.
So you got me on that. I got you on Engelbrecht.
There you go.
But even if you're not part of any four of those, if you want to just come hang out like you did in April, past April's for the Run Club weekend, this is going to be the Run Club weekend. This is where we're bringing people in from all over the country. We're gonna pray together, we're going to run together, we're going to laugh together, and we're just going to have a good old time. So details will be coming soon on that, but go ahead, if that's something you want to be part of, go ahead and mark that weekend on your 2026 calendar.
Make us struggle to find a room big enough to hold everybody. That's what we want you to do.
Yeah.
Make it be difficult for us to find a room big enough.
Yeah, now you're making things hard on me, Dean. But yeah, put that date on your calendar. Big Beach Marathon 2026. We're all going to be there, and we want you to be there with us.
Amen. Well, every week I share a reason why running and/or walking is so awesome, and this week it is this: running is about as flexible as you can get. Mm-hmm. You can do it at any age, any weight, any fitness level, any goal. You can run in the morning. You can run at lunch. You can run in the evening. You can do it pretty much 24 hours a day. You don't really need a partner, though you can run with a partner. If you have a funky schedule, running, walking is great because you can fit it in anytime, anywhere. If you like nature, you can get out in nature. You don't like nature, you like the gym, you can do it at the gym. Mm-hmm. Running is so, it's so flexible. I did it in my basement this past week.
What other sport? You've talked about this before, and I followed suit this weekend. What other sport can you do in the airport?
That's right.
And thank goodness I've got a running background because I had a connection flight coming home yesterday. I literally, Atlanta Airport, I sprinted from all the way at the end of Terminal C to all the way at the other end of the Terminal D.
Ooh.
And man, I made good use of those, it's not an escalator, but it's flat ground.
Yeah.
Going from terminal to terminal.
Yeah.
Oh man, I felt like I was Ryan Hall just cruising down.
Doesn't it feel great running on those?
Yeah. But had I not ran, I would have never made my connecting flight. They had already tried to book me on another flight, and I said, no, I think I can make it.
Oh,
it was
wow.
like a challenge,
Yeah.
But literally, I walked through, and they closed the door behind me. So.
That's pretty good.
But no other sport you can do in the Atlanta airport.
That's right. Well, my goodness, what a flurry of great running performances we've had. I mentioned, you mentioned earlier, Jared Naguse and Hobbs Kessler both broke their old world record for the indoor mile. And then 5 days later, here comes Ingebrigtsen from Norway, and he breaks that record by a lot, by over a second. And it's pretty amazing that New York, where they at the Millrose Games, where they have the Wanamaker Mile, which is what Jared ran, and they not only had that race, but they had a second race. Grant Fisher set the world record for the indoor 3K, with Cole Hocker also breaking the record, but finishing behind him. When Cole Hocker's not even a 3,000 meter guy, he's a 1,500 guy. So that was a fun race to watch. Matter of fact, Grant Fisher, Cole Hocker's famous for his kick, how fast he finishes races. And Grant Fisher outkicked him at the end of this race. So Cole tried to take it from way out, and Grant was like, I'm going to get you at the end, and he did. So anyway, some world records for some Americans. That's pretty cool. Josh Hoey is another guy that had an incredible performance that day. Beat Bryce Hoppel, who was fourth in the Olympics, and ran an American record time in the Olympics. He is on a tear. He set the American record for 1,000 meters recently, and so that guy is doing some amazing things. And then there were two American records in the half marathon. Wayne Kaladi set the women's record in the half marathon. She broke her own record. It was only a year old. But Connor Mantz set the men's record, which had been around for 17 years. Ryan Hall had held that record forever. And so Connor Mantz finally broke that record. I understand that Ryan Hall gave him a call afterwards to congratulate him, because Ryan Hall is a classy guy.
He sure
and
is,
would do that. And so I'm not sure where the Americans stand now in the marathon. I'd really like to see us become closer to the Kenyans and Ethiopians in the marathon. But, we finished 7th and 8th in the Olympics. But we're still, like in the half marathon, our record, 59:17, I think, is what Connor Mantz ran. And the world record is in the 57s.
So does Ryan still have the unofficial marathon record?
The unofficial one, yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, he's the only one to break 2:05. Right. He did that in Boston. He ran 2:04:58, I think it was.
And the only thing that wasn't official about it is it's...
Well, there were a couple of things unofficial about that one.
Well, but from a course standpoint, Boston is never eligible for a world record because
correct.
it's point-to-point elevation differences, right?
But on that particular day,
there was a wicked tailwind and everything.
There was a nasty
tailwind.
tailwind.
Yeah.
So, It made a difference.
But
day.
it's just great conditions.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Now, though, the American record is held by a guy you probably don't even know the name, Khalid Kanuchi. You don't even know that name. See, he set the record way back in 2002 when he ran 2:05:38, way before Super Shoes. And we're about due for that record to go down. So I'm hoping Connor Mance is not only going to break the American record for the half marathon, but the marathon really soon.
So is there anybody out there right now? I know, remind me of the gentleman that unfortunately died that was going to be the next marathon phenom.
The Kenyan.
Yeah.
His name's...
He was the only guy that, and I know you would probably argue he wouldn't, but he was the only guy that he had if anybody was going to break the 2-hour barrier, he might have been the one. Is there anybody in any field right now?
No, there's nobody close. There's a couple of guys that have been in the, I think, mid to high 201 range. So it's fast, and that's not too far off, but that they don't look to be the same talent level as either Elliott.
He was looking to be that way, wasn't he?
Yes. Yeah. Well, he's only missed it by 35 seconds in Chicago. So yeah, I mean it was almost bound to happen with him, but yeah, now I'm not sure how long it's going to be.
Yeah,
but we'll see. Kelvin Kiptum, he came out of nowhere when he did, and the next guy may come out of nowhere next year too.
Yeah, I mean, I had until not long before. Well, I don't even think I'd ever even heard of him until he did that.
That was only his third marathon.
Yeah,
so
that's crazy.
Yeah, he never ran slower than 2:01 something.
Yeah,
ever in his life. That's crazy. Well, how about a trivia question for this week? Here's a nice, simple, straightforward question that
nothing ambiguous about it.
Everybody should know the answer to. But I bet a lot of people don't.
I bet I don't.
So here's the question: what is the distance of the marathon in kilometers? So everybody knows it's 26.2 miles. How many kilometers is that?
I don't know the answer to that.
All right. Well,
I probably should.
You should send that to dean@upward.org if you know the answer to that. And if you're the first one, you'll win $20 off in the store. All right. Our motivational thought of the week comes from Dagny Scott Barrios. A writer said, "Every run is a work of art, a drawing on each day's canvas. Some runs are shouts and some runs are whispers. Some runs are eulogies and others celebrations."
That's a great quote.
Don't you like the idea of a run being a blank canvas?
Yeah.
And you get the chance to go out there and just paint whatever possibility you have for that day.
Yeah.
It's a neat thought. So think about that as you go out to run this afternoon or tomorrow or whenever your next run is. And until next time, may God bless every step of every run and or walk. Go out there and shine your light.
Good job, Dean.
For more information about Upward Running, visit upwardrunning.com. If you have questions about your salvation, click on the Peace with God tab. There is nothing more important. Thanks for joining us today.